Good morning, folks. Thank you for joining us. This meeting is being recorded. We'll notify you when the video is available for on-demand viewing. To reduce background noise, all participants have entered in listen-only mode. Anyone who is not muted, if you could mute your line when you're not speaking, that will help us with background noise. Type questions in the chat panel, and our moderator will get to those as time allows. If you lose your Zoom connection, try to follow the following. You may either close your Zoom and reconnect with the meeting link, and if that doesn't work, you can try to reboot your computer and again reconnect with the meeting link. Here's good morning from Dana Connors, who's going to open the program for us.
Thank you, Angie. And yes, indeed, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar and pleased to have you with us. It was about a year ago that we held a similar webinar in which we introduced you all to our commissioners. And today, with pleasure, we bring them back to give us an update on the issues, the activities within their respective departments. So a special welcome goes to each of our commissioners with special thanks for having the time and taking the time to be with us this morning. In a moment, I want to introduce each of them to you in the order of their presentation to all of us. But first, I want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors. And we also have a special video from one of them, our principal sponsor for these webinars. Our supporting sponsors are AARP of Maine, AmeriHealth Caritas, Central Maine Power, Charter Communications, Eaton Peabody, Enbridge, MEMIC, Northern Light Health, and Delta Dental, I should say. My apologies. So Angie, if you want to tee up the video for Hammond Lumber, I would appreciate it.
Hammond Lumber Company is a fourth-generation family-owned and operated business. Founded in 1953, Hammond Lumber has steadily grown into Maine's largest independent lumber and building material supplier. We want to thank you for supporting our Maine family business this past year and every year. We feel privileged to have again served the needs of our Maine communities across our 21 locations statewide. The Hammond team is made up of 800 dedicated employees. When you're ready to tackle your next building project, no matter how big or small, depend on Hammond Lumber Company for the products and services you need. Whether you're a contractor, homeowner, or do-it-yourselfer, Hammond Lumber will see your project through from start to finish. The knowledgeable staff at Hammond Lumber will be with you every step of the way and keep your project on schedule. From free estimating and planning to design and drafting services, and a wide variety of building and remodeling products, including complete home and garage packages, Hammond Lumber, the 2020 Pro Sales Dealer of the Year, is proud to be your building project partner. From our Maine business to yours, we wish you success and good health as we move through the new year. Learn more at hammondlumber.com or stop by the Hammond location nearest you. Thank you from everyone at Hammond Lumber Company, proud to be one of the best places to work in Maine.
Thank you, Hammond Lumber, and thanks goes out to all of our sponsors for allowing us to bring this special program to you. It is now my pleasure to present to you the 9 commissioners that we have with us today, for which we are all very grateful. Our first will be Commissioner Lambro, who will be with us. She must leave early, so she will kick us off, followed by Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Fortman, Commissioner Macon, Commissioner Chemiso, Major General Farnham, Commissioner Loisum, Commissioner Van Nolt, and we finish up with Commissioner Amanda Beale. So Commissioner Lambro, the floor is yours, but before I have you present, let me just kind of put this into context, if you don't mind. In so many ways, it doesn't seem possible that we are now beginning the 4th year of Governor Mills' first term. And during that time, 3 of those 4 years, each of you have had to perform your duties, carry out your responsibilities in the eye of an unprecedented, unanticipated, unrelenting storm, which we now recognize as COVID. And yes, your team has met it head on. You have managed it very well. Acknowledging at the same time, it's had an overwhelming presence. It's had a time-consuming influence on all of you as it has on all of us. But in spite of that, some very good things have happened. Success has taken place. Progress has not been denied. And that's where we begin. I would like to have each of you take a look back and share with us what some of those successes have been. What progress is made? What are you proud of? And then let's switch our attention to the year that we're in as we finish up our first term. And I ask you to think about the things you'd like to see accomplished, perhaps the good and the bad in this session, but more importantly, what does this year look like for you and your priorities? So Commissioner Lambro, it is yours.
Thank you so much, Dana. I bet that none of you want me, the Health and Human Services Commissioner, to kick off this meeting in 2022. We had all hoped this year would be different with the pandemic in our rearview mirror. But COVID-19 has proven historic in many ways, including its duration. Today, we have higher prevalence than we had in 2020 or 2021, which means that many of you currently have workers who are out. But let me tell you why I am proud of our work and why I remain hopeful for 2022. What we have seen globally and in other states appears to be happening in Maine. After a sharp climb in early January, Maine's positivity rate has dropped significantly in the last week, as have other metrics. The number of people with COVID-19 in critical care in Maine hospitals has fallen to a level we haven't seen since November. And while I do not want to minimize the deep and widespread harm caused by COVID-19, it is important to recognize what has not happened. The death rate from COVID-19 adjusted for population in Maine is only is the lowest, only lower in Vermont and Hawaii. Maine's death rate from this disease is 30% lower than that in New Hampshire and 60% lower than that in Massachusetts. Thanks in part to the Maine National Guard and the hard work of our health system, we have not had to resort to rationing healthcare and critical care in the state of Maine. While it has definitely been a challenge in the last 2 months, we have largely kept our schools and childcare providers open. And turning to businesses, since the widespread availability of the highly effective vaccines, we have not had to rely on gathering limits or physical distancing or other requirements to protect people who now have the tool to protect themselves. Keeping our businesses open is not just important to our economy, it is important to our health. Work gives people purpose. It supports their mental health, reduces reliance on substances. Work provides income to support healthy lifestyles, and it supports our workers having access to our health system, which I think is one of the best in the nation. As we emerge from this pandemic, we will build on this support for our health system, knowing that our ability to attract and retain workers throughout the economy is partly dependent on having quality, affordable, and accessible healthcare. Governor Mills has made significant gains in providing healthcare coverage to Maine residents, covering over 90,000 people through the Medicaid expansion and the new state-based private health insurance marketplace, CoverMe.gov, just had its inaugural season. It actually reversed enrollment declines for the first time in several years. We also, through the Small Business Health Insurance Relief Program in the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, have been providing workers with lower premiums as we transition out of the pandemic. Governor Mills is also proud that the biennial budget she signed into law includes significant support for our health system. Here at the Department of Health and Human Services, we are hard at work implementing its provisions, as well as developing proposals for the supplemental budget to ensure full and aggressive implementation of these and related policies. We also are hard at work implementing the healthcare workforce parts of the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. Maine had a healthcare worker shortage before the pandemic, which with the burden and stress of the pandemic has been exacerbated. The support through the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan will cover the waterfront, from attracting young people into these healthcare jobs, to supporting workers at the lower rungs of the career ladders to advance, to supporting all of our types of providers, from EMS to behavioral health to hospitals, find those quality workers that will help keep the system strong. Commissioner Fortman has been a fabulous partner in this effort. I think she'll talk more about a lot of these workforce efforts in her time, but it's been a collaboration that we're just so excited about, with the best yet to come. The Department of Health and Human Services has also worked to stabilize and expand affordable childcare in Maine. We posted a childcare plan for Maine last year, and two highlights of the work that we've been doing are: first, we have been providing monthly childcare stabilization grants to our providers. 88% of childcare providers in Maine are participating, and a condition of that grant is that they provide $200 a month stipends to each eligible staff person working in childcare. That's an important workforce support that we are very happy to have created. We're a leader in the nation in implementing it, and that will run through October. We also soon will announce a program to build childcare centers, bricks and mortar construction, with targeting areas that are rural, underserved, as well as those who will serve infants, which is a gap in Maine, as well as those affiliated with work sites. We know that childcare, affordable quality childcare, is an essential workforce and economic support, and we will continue our work to advance those efforts, including potential initiatives in the biennial budget. Right now, Department of Health and Human Services does remain hard at work limiting the spread and impact of COVID-19. We will continue that intense focus as we also continue these other efforts, knowing that the sooner we can really put the pandemic into a manageable and livable space, the better our economic recovery and strength of our efforts will be. So I thank you for listening to me today, and I hope you enjoy the other commissioners who will continue to talk about our great work. Thank you.
Well, we thank you as well, Commissioner, and we know your schedule doesn't allow you to stay with us, but we appreciate the service, we appreciate the success, and we thank you for being with us today. Take care. Now I'd like to turn it to Commissioner Johnson to share with us her perspective on the past as well as the rest of this year. Commissioner?
Great, thanks, Dana, and good morning, everybody. You know, it's interesting, as Dana said, 3 years ago, we did our first Meet the Commissioners, and now I feel like we've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time together. We'll talk a little bit about where we are. I'm actually going to have the opportunity to be with you all next week at Sunday River as well. So thank you, Dana, for that opportunity. So I will kind of keep my thoughts fairly brief this morning, but to start with some highlights. You know, certainly we don't want to be naive about the challenges, because there are some significant challenges ahead of us. But I do think as we look at the economic overview, we are seeing real points of recovery. You know, the GDP is up 4.2% over 2019. I'm using 2019 as a base because that's really right, some pre-pandemic numbers that give you kind of what the run rate was, and up 14% from 10 years ago. So we are seeing real growth there. We're seeing opportunities for exports in kind of key main sectors that we hadn't seen before. And businesses are really being able to capitalize on those and take advantage of that. So that is one of the positives. An additional positive, I think 3 years ago, one of the things we were talking about on this call, as I look back to my old notes, was out-migration. And what were we going to do, particularly in our rural communities, as people were leaving Maine? You know, now we had the 7th highest immigration numbers in the country. And people are actively moving to Maine and buying homes and staying in Maine. Certainly, right, that creates a different set of challenges when the dynamic changes that dramatically, right? How do we make sure they have services? How do we make sure that the schools are large enough and have enough teachers and enough seats and all of those things in some of these rural communities? But certainly I believe that's a much better challenge to have, right? How do we embrace new people into our communities and make sure that they have personal and professional networks that make them want to stay here long-term? We have seen before, right, up and downs in migration patterns, and right, this is an opportunity for all of us to work together to make sure that new people, as they come into Maine, right, trailing spouses have jobs. There are professional networks for those families, and they feel kind of embraced by Maine people. And, we're seeing that in a really interesting and positive way, I think, right now. Certainly, it's a little bit of a difficult time for people to build personal and professional networks. Doing meetings like this, and a lot of, extracurricular activities are maybe being done different ways. So it will take a real intentional effort on all of our parts to make sure that people are embraced and feel welcomed. But that immigration is a key part of one of the challenges that we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes, which is obviously the number of people in our workforce. The other thing that we're seeing are savings are up. Business savings are doing reasonably well. Individual savings are up. That creates an opportunity for us right now. It appears that savings are high and people are a little bit cautious about making additional investments. So, one of the things we'll look at is how do we help encourage small businesses to do the expansion they've been thinking about now. They have the savings. How do we help with that consumer confidence and business confidence to make that next step forward? One of the other positives that I will say that we are seeing right now is the investment attraction and expansion work is up significantly. When we started having these discussions 3 years ago, we talked a lot about shifting from looking for the one great solution to all of our economic needs to lots of pieces, right? The Maine economy is really built on small and medium businesses. And so as we continue to grow and diversify, really thinking about how do we attract small business owners? How do we make sure they have the resources to be successful and grow? How do we help medium businesses expand here in Maine versus going other places? And that's really been a focus of our team, and something I think that we're really proud of, how we're building resources and access to those resources. We have some new online tools. We have additional in-person tools as well to try to meet folks kind of with the tools that they are looking for. So we're excited about that. It doesn't mean that we're not out looking for big opportunities as well. We partner with Maine and Company and Focus Maine, and our Office of Business Development certainly does a lot of investment attraction at all levels. But I do think we've tried to create a focus on small and medium businesses that fit really well in Maine communities that can support and be part of those communities going forward. So I would say those are real strong points. I think our Office of Community Development has done some interesting things with CDBG funds to support communities in a different way over the last 3 years, expanding childcare access with scholarship funding for parents who maybe didn't traditionally qualify, but during COVID needed extra help, things like that, that will allow the adults in those families to go back to work, which was critical. So those are the creative things. The other positive piece I will say is tourism is up. We had 10.1 million visitors here over the summer. That's a high for us. And spending was up even more, which means people are staying longer. They're spending more while they're here. Sometimes that means instead of staying with family, they're staying in hotels. But it, in a lot of cases, means they're staying extra time because remote work and hybrid work has allowed people to extend their stay here. And so we have a real opportunity to capitalize on that going forward. And 25% of those visitors were new visitors. And I'm sure most of you know, once Maine has a visitor, our ability to get that visitor back is really high. So this percentage of new visitors is really important because it gives us a long-term trajectory for sustainability in tourism. We know the tourism sector was hit hard in 2021. This is a real opportunity. 2021 was a real opportunity for recovery, and we see that going forward. So we're very excited about that. As we think about challenges and things that we really want to work on, I think Laura will talk about workforce. So, I just want to acknowledge that challenge. This option around foreign visas. The governor's been very involved with the federal level, with the federal delegation and Department of Homeland Security to try to expand that and get those workers back into our workforce. which is was a big part of our gap for the summer. There are lots of other programs, and I'm going to leave those to Laura to talk about so that we don't duplicate there. But what I will say is the investment that the legislature and the governor are partnered on in what is LD 1733 that allocates the federal resource fund, the federal rescue funds, really lines up to all of the work that we've all been doing, right? A lot of the ideas came from business, some of them came from communities. As we built the strategic plan and the economic recovery plan, we had a really clear roadmap for where our risks were, where our challenges are, and that allows us to apply these funds to this short-term kind of COVID pandemic response, but also try to tackle some of these longer-term systemic challenges in our economy at the same time. And so where we can use those funds to tackle both short-term pain and long-term systemic challenges really gives us an opportunity to strengthen our economy as we go forward. So with that, Dana, I will pass it back to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, she was mentioned quite a bit in your comments. Commissioner Fortman.
Thanks, Dana, and thank you to all of my colleagues on this this Zoom meeting today. And I think, as you've already heard, we all work together very, very closely. And I think that as I'm looking back, Dana, I'd say that that is one of the big successes. I think that, 3 years ago when we started, all of us were pretty clear about what the governor was trying to do and what our piece of it was. I don't know if we were quite as clear about how we were all going to need to work together in order to achieve those goals. And one of the things that the pandemic has done is pointed out the interdependency of all of the services that are being provided by state government and the necessity to leverage those, work in partnership with each other and with the business community in order to come up with solutions. So, Heather pointed out the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan and the investments being made. And I want to just, when I think about the Department of Labor, I have to say that because of the pandemic, we did have a significant spike in unemployment. And as everyone knows, businesses are the ones who pay into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. Early on, the governor was very clear that using some of those federal funds to help replenish the trust fund and mitigate significant tax increases was critical. So she did that early on with CARES money. And then again, in the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, there were additional resources. So unlike many other states, the UI Trust Fund is solvent. Those resources were able to provide that economic stability for families and for communities. And now we're looking at the unemployment rate going down. I was just looking at some of the numbers, last year at this time, we had about like 34,000 people filing for unemployment insurance claims a week, and we're down now to about, I think this week, the numbers just came out today, about 6,000 people. So we have significantly fewer people needing to rely on unemployment insurance. And that gets to the point that Heather was making about businesses are open, things are recovering, and we are looking at workforce and how do we support workers going into those, good paying jobs. Pre-pandemic, and Dana, you know this probably better than anyone, we've been talking about demographic challenges for at least the last 20 years. Knowing that Maine is an older state and that we were trying to figure out strategies of how do we bring more people in. Heather talked about how do we get some in-migration. That has been an issue pre-pandemic. And what we have seen is that the workers who are not in the workforce right now, many of them are 55 and older and have retired early. They may have stayed if they did not have health concerns, They may be looking at this as an opportunity to have a better work-life balance. There may be things that we can do to entice them back into the workforce. We saw a little bit of an uptick once, as Commissioner Lambro pointed out, people started getting vaccinated and feeling more comfortable re-engaging. But that's one of the populations. And then the other are parents with caregiving responsibilities. And so we are still seeing those challenges about making sure that children are safe in school. And we're addressing that, as Commissioner Lambrew pointed out, by investments in childcare. We had childcare challenges pre-pandemic, and we're investing more heavily in those areas now to bring people into the workforce. So I think the good news is that we had some pre-existing challenges. We now have some resources and a focused strategy for how to address some of these challenges. And you have a level of coordination and partnership across the board that is significant. Some of the investments are in direct response to what we've been hearing from the business community too. Things like investments in apprenticeship programs. I think I've heard a number of people talking about, you know, where can I find people in the trades? How do I get a plumber? You know, we heard those requests. There are now strategies for meeting those needs and resources to support those efforts. We're also looking at the fact that right now we need everyone in our economy. And that includes people who have been left on the sidelines in the past, historically marginalized communities as well. You know, that can include some of the people who have been involved with the justice system, folks who are in recovery from substance use. There are people with disabilities. One of the programs that we have here at the Department of Labor is the Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And this is a group of folks who have, sometimes people haven't been as willing to help people with disabilities engage in the workforce. And right now we're seeing employers stepping up and asking, how can we partner? We have a number of programs that are providing programs, not just for adults, but also youth. And I know Commissioner Macon is probably going to be talking a lot about the youth programming that's happening. And I was surprised that Commissioner Johnson didn't mention it, but one of our big initiatives, by us, I mean all of us on this call, is really looking at what can we do around career exploration for our young people, making sure that they know that there is a place for them in Maine, and what those opportunities are. And for us at the department, we're particularly concerned about young people with disabilities. We want to make sure that they understand what their opportunities are, because the sooner we can increase their aspirations and help them achieve them, the greater the likelihood that is that they will not be left on the sidelines. These are talented, creative people that we need in our economy. So when you ask what I'm excited about, I am really excited that we are working together to make these opportunities available for all Maine people. We're seeing, you know, Heather had pointed out that perhaps some of our more rural communities, there was concern about people leaving, and we're seeing people moving into those communities. We're also seeing with the use, like we are today, of technology, that you can live pretty much anywhere and work. And we're capitalizing on those opportunities. So I don't want to go on too long, but I'd say I'm excited. We have a lot in front of us, and it really is about collaboration and partnership and investing wisely in these resources that we have to achieve goals that and address challenges that we've known we've had for a long time. So.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate your comments. Now we'll turn to our Educational Commissioner, Commissioner Macon. Commissioner?
Oh, hi, Dana, and hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here. It's certainly my honor to serve as Maine's Commissioner of Education and to be part of this incredible team of department leaders who individually are experts in their respective fields and collectively create the most impressive team I've ever worked with. We challenge each other and support each other, and we align our efforts so that we can ensure a high degree of effectiveness and also efficiency for the state. And of course, while you're hearing from all these passionate leaders across multiple disciplines today, I do urge you to consider what I would consider to be an obvious statement that education is most important. What I mean really is education is so critical to the future of our state, to the foundational pieces of democracy. And education nationwide, internationally, frankly, public education internationally, nationwide, and here in the state of Maine has never been more at risk and under just unfathomable duress. That said, I have some positive things to share as well. I'm very proud of the Department of Education's COVID pandemic response. We were among the first states, we were the very first state to get federal funding into the hands of local schools when the very first education-related relief funding package came out. And with 8 different funding sources from the federal government, we have been in the top 5 in terms of accessing those funds, writing the successful grant proposals in order to receive the funding, and swiftly getting that out there so schools weren't waiting or languishing without those critically needed resources. We also immediately ensured every possible federal nutrition waiver so that students in Maine last year and this year have been able to enjoy nutritious meals across the board without any concern about paying for those meals. We ensured connectivity. After multiple surveys, we were able to reach 100% of those who responded with whatever, for a little while, makeshift supports to be sure that students and teachers were not disconnected when schools did go remote so suddenly early in the pandemic. Our administration has worked hard to be present and collaborative. We've built a lot of trust with the field across each of the stakeholder groups, including community members, school board members, superintendents, the educators, and the support staff members. And they have been pulled in as a team of advisors for our department. And we've been meeting, I think for a while it was 2 or 3 times a week. We now continue to meet weekly with that cross section of stakeholders. And what that has done, it's an invisible possibly to everybody else, but it has created a strong team statewide where other states have divisive issues, and there are issues with the union and the administrators and the school boards. Here in Maine, you should be comforted to know that these teams work extraordinarily well together at the state level. And I think it has served our students in a way that might not be overtly noticed. We have approached each of the ongoing and dynamic changes related to the pandemic with flexibility and innovation. We are the only state that has created a K-12 online curriculum that is designed and taught by Maine educators. So it's not a canned program such as you would see in a lot of other states. We have an online SEL curriculum as well. So that's social emotional learning. Sorry for the acronym. The social emotional learning curriculum is available for anybody to access, parents at home, homeschooling families, and also educators in the classroom to ensure that students have a high quality opportunity to learn those critically important social and emotional skills to support high functioning and also to support mental health in so many ways. We've created programs that support outdoor education, nature-based education, Maine's marine sciences, and multiple other exciting new programs during the pandemic to support schools. We also have maintained our presence online. Our website was one of the first, it was one of the most prolifically accessed websites for schools across the nation and Canada. We were featured in the New York Times, in fact, because our resources were so plentiful and meaningful. We continue to offer live online office hours in every possible topic related to education, so that educators and family members and others who are interested in what's happening in education can connect with people at the department across every possible discipline, including mental health and social emotional learning, both of which have become extremely important, as you likely know. Outside of the COVID pandemic, our priorities have been workforce development. As Commissioner Fortman just mentioned, we are working really hard to engage students in programs and activities and experiences that will prepare them for the workforce. There's been a huge growth in the past 2 years, 3 years really, in the number of students engaged in CTE programs. I believe 10% more just in these 3 years. We've dramatically increased our financial support for early college programs. We developed a statewide computer science program, and our team right now is leading a group of computer science educators in the field in the development of an online learning module, or multiple online learning modules, so that we'll be the first state to offer a free open access continuum starting in kindergarten and going all the way up through 12th grade, so that students can learn independently or within their classrooms computer science skills that are going to be so incredibly important in our economy now. They certainly are, and they will be going forward. I think that's going to launch in March, and I'll let you know about it because I'm very proud of that. We also have been expanding access to high quality pre-kindergarten, and I believe roughly 90 new classrooms have opened up across the state in the past couple of years. Finally, I think I don't want to go on. I can go on. I'm so proud of a lot of things, but we are really working hard at the department to create a culture of research and development related to education. It's our goal to be a national leader in this, in fact, and we have secured an innovative grant through the federal government that allows us to partner with the University of Maine system and other higher eds and providers of innovation engineering courses and design thinking, so that our educators in Maine are going to be able to they'll be supported and inspired, and they will be gaining skills of research and development to really envision what might the next iteration of our public education system look like, in addressing such the concerns nationally on learning loss. Our team members are participating in national cohorts to find out what are the best approaches that we might take. I'm currently serving as the chair of the governing board for the Northeast Regional Education Labs, and it's a policy development group made up of research teams and field researchers and scholars and education commissioners from across the Northeast. And that gives me a real-time finger on the pulse of what are these cutting edge educational practices that will help our students moving forward in spite of the challenges, in spite of the disruptions. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't put in a plug to everybody. Please support your local public schools with a kind word, because really the confidence and the messaging around public education is critical right now. And also we are encouraging anybody who happens to have a little bit of extra time to consider serving as a substitute. Consider signing up, filling out that paperwork, and be ready to support, because our education workforce it was in dire shape prior to the pandemic, and we're seeing a lot of places across the state where the education workforce needs a lot of triage help right now. And we do have some exciting long-term plans, including teacher celebrations and professional development that I could talk about at a later time, but I'm going to just pause right there.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. There is no question, you are correct. There is no substitute for the role of education in one's life or their livelihood. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to turn our attention to Commissioner Chemiso from the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife for her report. Commissioner?
Great. Thank you, Dana. Thank you all for inviting me to this event. This is the first time I've been able to join you, so I really appreciate the opportunity. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about the many things that are happening here in the department. I'm regularly referred to as the Commissioner of Fun. And while I do like to have fun, I think it's important to remind people that the programs we oversee and manage are huge economic drivers in the state. Make no mistake, outdoor recreation in Maine is big business. It makes a huge economic impact that is felt throughout the state, particularly in rural areas. In fact, only 3 states in the country have a higher percentage of their GDP come from outdoor recreation than Maine. And Maine is number 3 in the country when it comes to the percentage of the state's population that participates in outdoor recreation. So during this pandemic, we've actually had a different challenge or maybe a new opportunity. And we have found that during times of crisis, people look for things that are familiar and comforting. And during this pandemic, people are looking to the outdoors. And we've seen Mainers and visitors alike continue to enjoy the outdoors in unprecedented numbers, reflecting the passion that people have for Maine outdoors. We know that time spent outside is restorative, healthy, and fulfilling. And one thing we're doing as a department is making it easier than ever to get outside. As a result, participation rates in hunting, fishing, ATVing, boating, and almost every outdoor activity is on the increase. We are breaking down barriers and giving people the information they need in the formats they choose, allowing them to enjoy the outdoors safely and responsibly. From fishing reports to live instructional YouTube broadcasts and web-based tutorials, we are providing information and people are responding by going outside, pumping millions of dollars into the state's economy, delivering jobs and supporting businesses in the most rural areas of the state. We are investing in Maine's natural resource economy. Through the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, the governor is injecting $20 million into Maine's hatcheries. Fishing, if you don't know, pumps about $320 million into our state's economy annually. And this additional investment will allow for improvements at the hatcheries that will expand our hatcheries in New Gloucester and Grand Lake Stream, safeguard hatcheries from disease, and improve water quality at all of our hatcheries. We are also working to secure natural areas where people can enjoy the outdoors no matter where they are in the state. Over the past 3 years, we have built 7 new water access sites and purchased 8 other properties that will provide water access in the future. Our mission at Fish and Wildlife is to preserve, protect, and enhance Maine's fish and wildlife. And certainly our biggest challenge to that mission is climate change. Climate change is very real, and we are seeing the impacts right now. Maine's king of the forest, our moose, are under siege by a winter tick that people can barely see. Maine's changing climate has shortened Maine's winters, allowing this parasite's population to expand rapidly. And while one tick certainly can't impact an animal as large as a moose, 70,000 of these ticks spending a winter on a calf can and will kill it. And it can also make the females less productive. Maine's wildlife scientists are researching and managing Maine's moose population so it's in balance with this new and changing environment. In Maine's western mountains, our native brook trout are battling hotter and drier summers. The Rangeley area, synonymous with our fishing heritage, has battled droughts over the past 3 summers. Maine's fabled rivers are rising in temperatures, providing no relief for the trout. Through monitoring temperatures and flows, protecting our waters from man-made threats, and conserving Maine's wild areas, we are slowing the impacts of climate change on these iconic Maine species. Maine Won't Wait is our call to action when it comes to battling climate change. Our goal is to conserve 30% of the state by 2030, Over the past 3 years, I'm pleased to say the department has conserved additional 20,000 acres, not only by conserving areas that people will enjoy for generations to come, but also sequestering climate to help mitigate the impacts of climate change. Already this year, we are on track to conserve an additional 30,000 acres by protecting core fisheries and wildlife habitat that will ensure not only our children, but our grandchildren will have a chance to see a moose in the wild or land a trophy trout. In the upcoming years, we will continue to make getting outside easier. We will look to conserve land and provide access in order to combat climate change, but we're also looking to do it in areas near where people live. The governor recently approved $40 million for the Lands for Maine's Future program. This is pivotal not only when it comes to combating climate change, but also providing areas where Mainers and visitors alike can go hiking, hunting, fishing, hiking, snowmobiling, or just enjoying the outdoors. The legislature also made it clear to us to protect deer yards in Maine. Deer are at the northern edge of their range here, and not only will this help deer survive Maine's harsh winters, it will also protect habitat that will benefit dozens of other species. The LMF board recently approved the purchase of Caribou Stream Deer Yard, fulfilling the vision set forth by the legislature, as well as protecting 4 other parcels, including 21 miles of shoreline on East Grand Lake, expanding the Kennebec Highlands, protecting pristine waters and wild brook trout of the Kennebago River, and creating a community forest at Bucks Ledge in Woodstock. At the legislature, we will continue to remove barriers and increase opportunities to get outside, as well as continuing to make your time in the outdoors as safe as possible. Currently, our committee is looking at revamping our antlerless deer permit system, which will provide more opportunity, as well as allow us greater control in managing the state's deer population. In order to keep people safe while enjoying Maine's lakes and ponds, we just passed the first step in boater education for everyone. When I became commissioner, my first goal was to create a strategic plan that involved the entire agency. We did that, and one of the first goals that came forth was increased communication with a broader audience, with our goal being that we wanted to increase public knowledge of the department, what we do, and why we do it. We've worked hard to expand the communications team of the agency, and as business people, I'm sure you can appreciate what we are doing. We communicate through email with over 600,000 people who hunt, fish, snowmobile, ATV, or boat in Maine, but it's our social media numbers that really continue to hit it out of the park. Last year, we broadcast 30 live presentations on YouTube with over 25,000 visits. We created 10 podcast episodes that were downloaded over 53,000 times. We have over 15,000 followers on Twitter, 42,000 on Instagram, 147,000 on Facebook. In 2021 alone, we reached over 2.6 million unique people on Facebook. Mainers and visitors alike are loving the outdoors in Maine. They are hungry for information regarding outdoor recreation in Maine. We will provide them with the tools to enjoy the outdoors, and people are responding in numbers that we have never seen before. Thank you for your time today. And if you are ever wondering what's going on in the Maine outdoors, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and we will keep it posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for reminding us how important our outdoors really is to us. I doubt if any of us have doubted that during the COVID, because it was such an opportunity for us. Yeah, but thanks for both of your stewardship as well as reminding us of that value. So next, we're going to turn to Major General Farnham of the Department of Defense, Veterans, and Emergency Management. General?
Thank you, Dana. And again, thanks for inviting me to be part of this event today. It's always a great opportunity to talk about the department. And to start with is the Department of Defense, Veterans, and Emergency Management. It took me a couple of years to be able to say that all at one time and not get it tangled up. But that really is the 3 roles that I play. And so what I thought today I'd do is really provide 2 public service announcements and then 1 big, huge thank you. So for the public service announcements, Maine continues to be have one of the highest percentages of veterans in the country for a state. And so that means that those veterans are in our workforce. And we've heard plenty of talk today about that workforce and some of the struggles. And so what I want to offer today and remind you and employers all across the state is that when we have veterans that have struggled, whether it be medically, financially, mental health, whatever it ends up being, and the VA could have helped, what we find more often than not, embarrassingly too often, is that they did not know the services that they were eligible for with the VA. And that's one of the things that our Bureau of Veteran Services does, is try to connect our veterans in the state with the services that they have earned. So when you have an employee that has some of these struggles and you want to do more for them, and you just can't, if they're a veteran, reach out to BVS and have them help that veteran get connected to the VA, because that may be able to make them a much more productive employee for you, let alone a better citizen of the state of Maine. My next public service announcement today is from Maine Emergency Management. And one thing that has happened this last 2 years, it's COVID all the time. And all we talk about is contact tracing and sanitize this and sanitize that, and when we're going to wear masks, when we're not going to. That is all encompassing. But let's not forget that in an environment that still has terrorism, still has now peer competitors, China, Russia, that are out there trying to or potentially threatening some of our infrastructure, whether it be through cyber or just our infrastructure, aging infrastructure, and climate situation. There are a lot of things that can upset our operations. So to go back to basics a little bit and focus on continuity of operations and internet and electric grid and your own cyber security. It's important to do that. And so that's that PSA. Kind of look back, think about dating a few of you, maybe dating myself, but back to Y2K and everything that we did to prepare for Y2K, and the things that in a lot of cases in the supply chain that they forced us to look at in order to do business with some of the major companies. We spent a lot of time preparing for what didn't happen, of course, but those were all good practices, and I want to remind folks of that. The big thank you comes from the National Guard, and we have had an extraordinary couple of years, and this last year has been no different. Our business model relies on employers understanding and supporting what we do and your employees' membership in the National Guard. Now, historically, that's been annual training, drill weekends, and the occasional overseas deployment that a lot of times we know almost a year in advance that we're going to be deploying. This year, we've had folks on the southwest border, Africa, Poland, Guam, Qatar, Europe, and in Europe, doing the more traditional deployments that you'd expect of the National Guard in our federal role. And these deployments have taken off and taken on an increased sense of purpose. And you just have to turn on the TV and read what's going on over in Ukraine to see why some of that is, let alone the threat that China is to us at this time. But the COVID support has been kind of a new something new for us to at least to the extent that we're doing in the state and helping our neighbors. We love it. We've been involved in a lot of different parts of it. I think last year I talked about the different things we've been doing, and that's continued. But then back last January, we mobilized 200 very short notice, 200 soldiers, very short notice to go down to the nation's capital to help secure the inauguration. And now here in the last couple of weeks, we've involuntarily mobilized another over 150, I think it's 169 was the last number on top of what we already had, but involuntary mobilization to help in the state's hospitals. And so that has put an incredible stress, I know, on employers to get that kind of short notice mobilizations. I was in downtown Bangor last week, and And I was reminded by the first 3 people I ran into that they had lost either an employee or their snowplow driver. Last week, we had some conversations about one of our members. It's a school teacher getting pulled out of the schools to go work in a hospital. It's a sacrifice that everybody is making to try to do a COVID response that is really all of the state response. And I think we all should be very proud of, but also recognize that it requires the soldiers and airmen's families, but also, and in this case, the big thank you to employers who have had to be understanding and supportive of their employees that are getting pulled out to do this help in the hospital. And again, I'm very proud of what the National Guard has been able to do to help in this. But I also recognize that it's not free and that there are sacrifices that employers are making, and we surely appreciate that. So that's all I wanted to do today was the 2 public service announcements and the big thank you, and appreciate being part of the event.
You did that very well, General. And when you speak of sacrifice, let it be said that we deeply appreciate the sacrifice that you provide all of us in terms of the responsibilities that fall within your particular area. It's remarkable. We don't take it for granted, or at least we shouldn't, because we so depend on it. So particularly in the world we live in today. So thank you. Now let's talk with Commissioner Loisum about the Department of Environmental Protection. Melanie?
Good morning, everyone, and my thanks to the Chamber for arranging today's event. There are a couple of priorities of the Department of Environmental Protection that I thought I would mention for our audience today. First, unfortunately, is PFAS contamination. I would note that if I said that to a group of people a year ago or 2 years ago, you wouldn't have known what I was saying when I said PFAS, but unfortunately now you do. It is having an absolutely tragic effect on Maine citizens, particularly our farmers. It is a 2-pronged problem. There is contamination that has already happened and new contamination that is continuing to happen. I'm grateful to Governor Mills and the legislature for appropriating $40 million last year for DEP and the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry to provide immediate assistance to residents and farmers with contaminated water supplies and products. Almost 200 treatment systems have already been installed and more are scheduled. Another $22 million was appropriated for wastewater infrastructure, including PFAS treatment. DEP is currently working with wastewater districts that are considering installing PFAS treatment technologies, and we've provided grants to districts to dewater sludge that can no longer be land applied and must now be landfilled. But this is nowhere near enough to compensate people for their losses. DEP is providing support to the Maine Attorney General's office as they explore pathways for holding chemical manufacturers ultimately responsible for the damages from their products. We're also working to reduce the amount of new PFAS that's entering Maine's environment. The sale of PFAS-containing firefighting foam is now prohibited in Maine with very limited exceptions. Starting next January, all manufacturers of products for sale in the state that contain any amount of intentionally added PFAS must report that product and its PFAS content to DEP. We anticipate that's going to be a lot of products. DEP is working with the Interstate Chemical Clearinghouse to expand their online chemicals reporting system to include PFAS reports to DEP by next year's reporting deadline. DEP is also contracting for a market analysis to determine if safer alternatives to PFAS use in 4 types of food packaging that have been identified by the state of Washington are available at a comparable cost in Maine. If so, those types of food packaging could meet the statutory criteria for a prohibition as well. By January 1st, 2023, the sale of carpet and fabric treatments containing intentionally added PFAS will be prohibited. And additional strategies to manage and treat wastewater are the subject of 2 bills that will be considered by the Environment and Natural Resources Committee on Monday. Although PFAS gets all the attention, I would like to quickly remind this audience of a variety of other product restrictions that are now in effect in Maine. Plastic bags, polystyrene food containers, also polystyrene food containers in plastic bags delivered by your delivery guy. also prohibited. Phthalates in food packaging, flame retardants in residential seating furniture, and hydrofluorocarbons in a variety of appliances are all prohibited. And soon efficiency standards for appliances ranging from computers to urinals will apply too. Second, I wanted to talk about permitting. Things have been busier than ever during the pandemic, as you've heard from many of the commissioners already before me today. At DEP, we are receiving record numbers of land use permit applications, and we're reviewing more large projects that require multiple DEP permits, such as air emissions, wastewater discharge, site law, and the Natural Resources Protection Act. In 2021, the department processed more land use permit applications than ever before. That broke the previous record from 2020, and we're already well on track to set a new record in 2022. Unfortunately, the more people who need their permit as fast as possible, the slower it goes for everyone. We do understand that regulatory certainty and timeliness are key to doing our work of protecting the environment in a way that supports and promotes investment as well. I admit we're not always great at delivery of that, but improvements are coming. The Land Division now includes 17 licensing positions. We're in the process of hiring for 8 of those right now. DEP was appropriated $4 million in the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan for more contractual assistance with licensing, and $8 million for development of an online licensing portal for all permit types in the department. We've already established some contracts for specialized services, such as legal writing, review of financial instruments, and review of engineering designs. And we're going to be working with the University of Maine system to offer paid internships for students so they can get some real experience in how government works. There's a lot more going on at DEP, so please check out our website and sign up for our public notices. Thank you.
We thank you, Commissioner. Extremely important information you shared with us today, and we thank you for that. Now let's go to our foundation of our economy, or at least one of the very vital features of our economy, our transportation system. And with us is Commissioner Van Note. Bruce.
Thank you, Dana, and thanks to all your members for the opportunities today. I want to echo a couple things right out of the gate. I've never been part of a better team, and other than the general, probably DOT is probably the most kind of militaristic, too strong a word, but you give an order and follow it kind of thing. And during the pandemic, just examples of it, there were various things that had to happen right away, and we had some GIS capabilities and other things that could help other places. And I just said, get in contact and do it. And you had the usual little hesitation, like, can I do that if they said? And finally, I just ordered a directive that said, an order from any commissioner to you shall be considered an order from me. Execute and figure it out. And that was the kind of thing how it happened. And it allowed a lot of planning. Our people delivered all kinds of masks and other things to schools all over the state. So DOT loves a crisis, and we came to find out no one loves it, but boy, did we come together and get a lot of stuff done. So very proud of that, and the 1,700 people here that made that all happen. I'll follow your kind of thought process, Dana, of just kind of looking back a little bit and then looking forward. This isn't really accomplishment, but it's just a fact that people might not know. Traffic has rebounded pretty much to 2019 levels. We're within like 1%. We ended up doing a weekly travel report that we sent to all commissioners so we could kind of gauge what was happening and where. It has shifted a little bit with telework and other things, and cities like, I-295 coming in Portland from the north is still down on peak hour a little bit, but it has shifted the recreation areas up towards MDI, and that has shifted. So that supports, the observations of everybody, and Judy's numbers that cannot lie, of all the people going to all the outdoor places. The traffic supports that. So that's reassuring in a way. I mean, it's just kind of like not everything is still gummed up and shut down. In terms of looking back, you can't talk anything about transportation without talking about a federal transportation bill. In fact, we are in the weirdest situation I've ever been in my 25 plus years in public service, where we're still trying to juggle and figure things out. And the most common question we get is, what are you going to do with all that extra money? Like, you just, you must be swimming in it. And the bill is very good news. There's no question about that. The shorter term reality is a little more muted. Federal funding for transportation came in two primary buckets. The first was kind of the guaranteed formula funding, what feels like a paycheck, something you can rely on and know that you have and build your programs around. And then discretionary grant programs that you can compete for. On the first type, there was no question there was a healthy increase, 28%, which for Maine translates to $66 million. It's not chump change at all. Very significant. That comes on the heels of construction cost increases, increasing by over 40% over the last 3 years. So it kind of feels more like a cost of living increase on that particular side. But the big news is in the discretionary grant programs. Those were dramatically expanded. Existing programs doubled, some near tripled, and 9 new programs added. That's a wait and see, but looks good. That's a target-rich environment right there, because they're still writing the rules for eligibility and how you win those competitive grants. That process that takes months, but that's where I see things really happening and allowing us to move from what has been kind of a MacGyver mode, patch it up and kind of thing, to more proactive long-term investment. So that's very good news. On the state level, I can say without hesitation that the general fund saved us. I mean, there was a real drop in highway fund revenue, obviously, during the pandemic, tens of millions, because people just stopped going places for a while. General fund stepped up. For example, last year with the governor's leadership and the appropriations, the entire legislature passed 2 different initiatives that were worth $106 million of general fund resources that allowed us to maintain solid capital programs throughout the entire pandemic. And if you want to talk about a accomplishment, I guess that would be something. And didn't skip a beat. And in fact, in the year of the peak pandemic, 2020, we actually added about $30 million worth of work and 10 projects, including a lot of work down on 295 in Portland, because what better time to do the work when there are no cars on it? And so we were able to do that by once in my lifetime July bond that was on the ballot then. And so instead of waiting until November, we were able to move faster. So that's a real accomplishment. And we did that at delivery rates of the highest ever in 2020, 94% and 88% on-time delivery, which anybody who's been trying to get a deck built on the back of their house and trying to get people to do stuff understand that schedules are tough in the construction industry right now. And but we were able to do that and deliver hundreds of projects. Last year we did 164 projects for 472 million, which industry estimates say is support about 6,000 construction jobs. And that's a similar number that happens every year, but it's the fact that that machine kept going unabated throughout all of this that very proud of. Looking forward, I break it down into kind of 2 categories, some kind of specific initiatives and then kind of a broader, more general reset that we're trying to have. In terms of specifics, we also have a piece of the Maine Jobs Recovery Plan, workforce transportation pilot that we're looking to get stood up. That will be something that can be very specific, and as soon as approvals happens, we can start taking applications. This is a pilot. If individual companies have ideas about what their needs are, we're intended to not go through, kind of a longer, more bureaucratic process, but just try some things very, very quickly to get from point A to point B for individuals. It's obviously a focus on workforce transportation needs, and especially in the rural areas. So that's something we'll be doing in 2022. Another initiative that we're proud of and are made possible actually by anticipated discretionary grants from the federal government is what we call a village partnership initiative. This is an expansion of our partnership initiatives with municipalities, where you can rethink and revitalize your downtown areas. DOT historically has and always will focus on rural mobility of people and goods. Kind of people think as you drive around the state, most people think of DOT once you get to the speed limit that says 45 or up. And you're thinking, okay, that's DOT. And as soon as you reach a village in Maine, it kind of slows down, you start thinking local. That's true, it is. We know we can't come into any municipality and say, hi, we're here from the state, we're here to help. We'll tell you what your village should look like. But we've had a lot of past successes without it being a formal program. If anybody just drives around the state, and you look at what we did at the little village of Belgrade, what happened here in Hollowell, what happened in Nagunquit, what happened at Woodford's Corner in Portland, and you continue up 302, take a look at Naples, Bridgeton, and what we're doing in Freiburg. And that's an overt shift to include these village type areas. What do those do? That in the broadest sense, DOT has been focused on making sure you can get there from here, but this is making the there a better place to go once you get there. It affects immigration. I mean, it affects, we're talking about people coming to Maine. We don't want that. I love Portland, but we don't want them all trying to buy the housing that's not there in Portland. We want them to spread out a little bit. And these villages, in coordinating with the new broadband effort, shouldn't be working to do a village unless you got high-speed broadband at the same time. And you do those kinds of things, and that can be a differentiator for a family for away that is looking to come in and say, do I want to live here? And they go, Jesus, nice little walkable. Yeah, I like this village. Oh, and look, they have good broadband. So that's an initiative that we've had past successes. We're just kind of formalizing and trying to scale it up based on anticipated federal funding, which are focused on exactly those kinds of things: livability, walkability, bike friendly, those kinds of things. And the last specific would be climate related work that we're doing. Offshore wind provides a huge opportunity for Maine. If we want to achieve our climate goals, we have to find a way to obviously decarbonize our electricity generation. Offshore wind makes sense, given what the Saudi Arabia of wind in the North Atlantic off our coast. If you want to capture the jobs that go with that and the economic activity go that, it will translate to the need for a wind port supporting those activities. In fact, it will be ultimately various port facilities throughout the state as the industry scales through research and scales up. Initially in the short term, the Searsport area is a focus to try to, there's opportunities there to provide a world-class, in fact, first ever floating offshore wind port on the East Coast that could serve a lot more than Maine. So we'll be focused on that effort. And then on, scaling back from clean energy to just the electrification of the fleet, passenger fleet, which is inevitable in my view. The timing, people can discuss what that timing is, but it's coming, and there's funding in the federal bill and to provide charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, passenger cars first, and we're teaming with Efficiency Maine and other agencies to produce that. Strategic kind of plan level thing will be coming out soon so people can see it. There'll be opportunities to come back and forth. It's going to involve the private sector, no question, because if you're looking to level 2 charger, which is, takes hours, that's going to be more at office buildings and hotels, and that level 3s are going to be more like you're still there for 20, 30 minutes. What are you going to do? The idea that you're going to just plunk them out in the middle of nowhere, probably not. You're going to want to be somewhere where they can get out and do something. So that will be a teamwork effort that is exciting, and it's part of, it's part of the transformation of what's going on. In a more general, so those are kind of the specifics. In a more general sense, we're looking for 22 to be kind of, I call it kind of a big reset, if you will. Expectations are sky high right now about what can happen and what not. I think we need more information about exactly what federal funding can be and what can come to Maine. We have to still be grounded, but you have to set your long-term goals. And so there are a lot of long-term planning efforts happening this year, including a long-range plan, a rail plan, a strategic transit plan, and a first ever active transportation plan, all happening this year. So we'll get the kind of goal setting as part. The other thing you need to have kind of a turn kind of ideas and expectations into kind of fundable programs that we can deliver, which is, of course, that's always what we're trying to do, is we got to get our arms around costs and capacity. Costs have been very high in recent years. Not blaming contractors. I mean, it's about hiring, it's supply chains, it's the where we are. Are we at a plateau? Is that going to moderate? Still go up? I think we need to know that before we get too far ahead of ourselves about what we can accomplish. And most people think by the end of 2022, you'll have a better idea of that. I don't think we'll have, you never have, the crystal ball is always foggy, but it'll be a little bit clearer. And then we see what, as I said before, what funding becomes available on the federal and state levels. And we can translate all those, goals, how much it costs and how much money you have is what you need to come up with a plan. And we expect to spend 2022 doing that. It feels a little bit like shoveling snow in a blizzard right now. I mean, there's just a lot going on, but it will settle out, and we're looking forward to like everyone, it's not post-COVID, but a different phase of COVID, just the COVID management phase, and that we just kind of get into a different place and, but not try to be exactly the same. Got what we learned, because we learned a lot of stuff that we can do through COVID. So that's what we expect to do on a more general level during 2022. And we always look forward to input from the business community and anyone else, because that's the only reason transportation exists, by the way, is for economic opportunity and quality of life. If it's not doing those, I don't want to build a bridge in the middle of nowhere that doesn't help people or a business. So look forward to it. We're excited. It's a great time to be in transportation, and I'm privileged and honored to serve the governor and the people of Maine, try and do this job.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's no question that in the minds, as well as the priority of Maine people, transportation is considered to be a very valuable investment, and we thank you for your stewardship. Last but clearly not least is our Commissioner of Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, Amanda Beale. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. And we think of Maine, it's hard not to think of fishing, farming, and forestry, because that clearly has been our pillar of strength over the years, maybe changed a bit, but still remains very valuable. You have two of those, Commissioner. So I want you to share with us what's happened in the first 3 years that you feel very good about, as well as what concerns you or what you're working on for the year that we're a part of.
Yes, happy to do so. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for making the time for all of us to speak with you today. And I share the sentiment that you've heard already, that it is really an honor to be in this position and be working for this administration at this time. So as an overview for those who may not be familiar with the inner workings of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, we steward many of Maine's most treasured resources that are the foundation of our natural resource economy. That includes things like preventing and fighting forest fires, mapping the ocean floor, stewarding our parks and public lands, and planning wise land use, supporting our forestry and agricultural sectors, and ensuring the safety and abundance of the food that we eat. So very broad scope here. Our work touches on the lives of every Maine person every single day in multiple ways through our 4 bureaus, 110 programs, and approximately 700 staff members when we're fully staffed up in the high season. Today, I'll touch on just a few areas that we're working on that I think might be of interest to all of you. So I'll start out by noting that one of the complications tied to the pandemic is that we have broken records on a lot of fronts, and that has really increased the demand for our services across numerous areas of our work. In our Bureau of Parks and Lands, where we directly steward more than 700,000 acres of land, including our 48 state parks and historic sites, we've counted record numbers of visitors to these parks and public lands. In fact, we've broken the 3 million visitor mark for parks in the last 2 years. This is, all-time high. We're also seeing evidence of very high utilization in some of our most remote parks and public lands, and we really don't see that trend reversing, which Commissioner Camuso also noted. And on that note, we've really appreciated our partnership with the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and the Department of Economic and Community Development's Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation, as we've worked together to promote messaging to educate these many outdoor enthusiasts on how to recreate safely. And in our Bureau of Forestry's work, we've seen in correlation with this increase in human traffic in the outdoors an all-time high and record-breaking number of forest fires. That was 1,150 forest fires in 2020 and 652 in 2021. Previously, our average was about 450 fires per year. In our Bureau of Agriculture, we've also been fielding disruptions in the food supply and processing and helping consumers and producers alike to get their needs met, while also dealing with an increase in food insecurity in the past couple of years. And in our Bureau of Resource Information and Land Use Planning, the surge in interest of people from within Maine and beyond to reside in less populated areas of our state has kept our Land Use Planning Commission very busy with permit requests for development in our unorganized territories. So with all of that said, we've been working on and making progress in a number of areas that I'll talk about now, beginning with our work to address and build our resilience in the face of climate change, which has cross-cutting implications throughout our department and our state as a whole. Over the past few years, staff across our department have been very involved in the implementation of various goals embedded in the state's climate action plan, Maine Won't Wait, from serving on the Climate Council and co-chairing, serving on or providing staff support to numerous working groups. In addition, over the past year, various program staff in our department have been working with other state natural resource-based agencies to look at opportunities to collaborate on meeting cross-cutting goals, as well as looking at the practices and policies within our own programs for ways to enhance our overall response to climate impacts and mitigation opportunities. This year, the department also completed the development of a roadmap to end hunger in Maine by 2030. Our planning process began with evidence-based strategies and success stories from work in other communities and around the globe. We then leveraged expertise from across state government. Contributing departments included education, economic and community development, health and human services, transportation, labor, and the Office of the State Economist, as well as the Governor's Office on Policy, Innovation, and the Future. We had a series of 42 virtual convenings over the last year, and participants included legislators, nonprofit and business leaders, educators, policy experts, and many concerned people of Maine. We engaged about 200 people In this process, and notably, contributors included people who had lived and living experience of hunger. The plan provides a roadmap for simultaneously meeting the food needs of Maine people today while addressing economic and social conditions so that the problem does not continue to occur going forward. It's really been an honor for DACF to steward this work up to this point, and it will go forward, but it will require a great deal of interdisciplinary collaboration and coordination. And as that is the foundation this plan was built upon, we're confident that this important work in our state is well poised to progress and benefit from strong collaboration. And as Commissioner Camuso also noted, another bright spot was the $40 million that was allocated by the governor and the legislature last year to fund the Land for Maine's Future program, which does reside in our Bureau of Resource Information and Land Use Planning. That resulted in the LMF board's ability earlier this week to approve 5 major conservation program projects that Commissioner Camuso spoke about, which will preserve public access to lakes, rivers, scenic views, and mountain vistas. And as Commissioner Johnson mentioned earlier in regards to the passage of LD 1733 last session, the legislature approved Governor Mills' American Rescue Plan Act proposal to allocate $50 million for state parks to improve aging infrastructure and inadequate infrastructure, and also nearly $20 million to support agricultural infrastructure development and $20 million to support forestry. And as Commissioner Kelleher isn't with us today, I'll also note that $10 million was also set aside to support the seafood industry, which means that altogether $50 million is being invested in strengthening our heritage industries, which we know are tied to many other sectors of our economy. And finally, I'll touch on some of the specific food system issues we've been working on, some related to the pandemic and supply disruptions, and some that have other origins. You've probably all heard stories at this point about how people turned quickly to local farms to fill the gaps in food supply at the beginning of the pandemic. Supply chain disruption in general has been felt by individual and institutional consumers, and we may continue to see those impacts. But the good news is that Maine farmers produce a lot of food, and they're here for all of us. We've done a lot of work to strengthen our in-state market channels. And one example I'll share is that last summer, we learned that Maine's $200 million summer camp industry was struggling to source food amidst pandemic supply chain disruptions. In response, our agricultural resource development team quickly created resources connecting camps with local distribution and sourcing alternatives, which they later buttressed with a Real Maine wholesale directory on the Real Maine website. This is a resource that will permanently allow for institutional and wholesale buyers to easily find local producers. Our economic development and agricultural resource development team continue to work tirelessly in uncovering and developing solutions to our infrastructure and processing needs. In addition, we've distributed exponentially more food through our emergency food program and provided grants to food pantries to address elevated levels of food insecurity. We've also been working to expand the geographic and demographic reach of the Maine Senior Farm Share program. In addition, we've responded head-on to market disruptions in the dairy industry that resulted in Horizon Organics planning to cancel contracts with 14 of our state's organic dairy farms, which has a ripple effect on all dairy farms and the agricultural sector as a whole. And we are working closely with DEP and Maine CDC to grapple with the devastation of PFAS contamination in our state. In terms of this legislative session, we've also done a lot of work in the past year and have generated a record number of reports for the legislature on issues mentioned here and many others, which will be the basis for discussion and policy decisions now and in the future. As far as the year ahead goes, all of the topics I've touched on here today are areas where we have a lot more work to do, along with many other areas, and we will just keep moving forward full steam ahead on all of these fronts. And overall, I'm proud to say that we have not let the pandemic get in the way of progress on all of these fronts. And as others have said before me, collaboration across all agencies has been and continues to be very high. So with that, I will thank you again for taking the time to hear from us and for your great work and ongoing partnership.
Well, Commissioner, we thank you. What you have said really is fundamental to our state's success, and we deeply appreciate it. We have had the pleasure of having our commissioners for an hour and a half. Unless there is a burning question, I do not see any in the chat room unless you do, Angie. I'll make some closing comments. If any of you have questions, please forward them to either Angie Arno or myself at the chamber. We can be sure to get them to the commissioner. But I do want to take this moment to sincerely thank our commissioners with us today and those who were not able to be with us for your leadership, for your service. It's very clear from what you've heard today that we have the luxury of having commissioners with skill, with commitment, with a willingness, desire, and a practice of working together. I can also add, all of whom are very accessible. And if you have questions or concerns, they're there to help you. You know, you can't help but be reinforced by what you've heard today in recognizing that two things. Economic progress is really about dealing with our problems, the barriers, but it's also about recognizing all the good that goes on, the progress that you have in the face of those challenges, because we all know that the end of 21 was a very strong finish. And frankly, that was because people were feeling better. The demand was there. The consumer confidence was up. And that's why it's so important to never forget the progress while we focus on the problems. And I would also say this state is so fortunate. I'm struck by it. It seems like somebody had that crystal ball. Maybe it was 1,100 people, or maybe it was the administration. It doesn't matter. But when you think of the strategic plan being in place 2019, prior to the pandemic, but it predicted and prioritized so many things that we're now dealing with that gave us that sense of priority so that we could. That's good news. That's a plan that allows us to move forward. With that, I would thank each and every one of you for all that you provided us today. We've learned a lot, and thanks to you for being with us, but your willingness to work with us. It means the world to us. I thank you, and take care, everyone.